Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. No matter what time of the day or night it is a great time to be a Gamecock. I am Tony, here with Adam, raised as gentlemen, so we know it is ladies first. Our women's basketball team, tough loss on the road out at UCLA. They had a sold-out crowd on hand, 77-62, and the talent that they put forth, it really showed. We could never get ourselves together, always trying to climb that mountain, that big hill as the game went on, not knocking down shots, and the slow starts again, like we talked about in our last show, it plagued them throughout this one. And it's just not something that you could come back from. It certainly wasn't, because the Bruins just held tight to that game. They always felt like they were in command, at least from what we watched as we live reacted to this game. And this is something where now, as fans, it's a little bit more of a soul-searching experience for players as well, especially not facing that adversity. This is definitely a change of pace for the program. Adam here looked up an old stat, and not that old, but this is a program that hasn't faced a regular season loss in a good while. And now we are just looking into what happened, what went wrong, what can get better as we have a top 20 matchup coming up on Turkey Day Thursday.
Yeah, I looked it up, and it was December 2021 the last time this program lost in the regular season. And I think I mentioned it on our live stream. We did a watch-along for this game against UCLA. And I mentioned it afterwards that it's going to be probably more interesting to see how a program like this, who hasn't faced a regular season loss in 3 years, almost 3 years at this point, try to bounce back from it. Because the losses they've had, the few since then, since their last regular season loss, they had an elimination loss in, was that 2023?
Yeah, Iowa.
2023 against Iowa,
against Iowa.
And then they had the SEC championship loss in the 2021-2022 season. But then they had a little time off before the tournament began, and then they went on a run and won the title. So to have a loss and then have to go right back out there and play just a few days later, it's much different than a season-ending loss. Obviously, that you have an entire offseason to prepare for. The SEC championship loss, it hurts, but it's not the end of your season.
Not at all.
You have more time to prepare for the tournament. So getting back on track is not really something we are used to seeing from USC, because they haven't had to get back on track. They haven't just been on the track, they have set the track in women's basketball the last few years.
They certainly have. It is going to be falling off the mountaintop, if you will. It's really going to be a tough one when you have been so dominant, when you've been winning these titles, when you see just such a far and in-between stretch of time where there are losses. But they can happen, and they are going to happen. This is going to be a very difficult era of women's basketball. It is only getting tougher, and it's just something you really got to take serious now, because it's not going to be easy at the top. You're going to be seeing more of these programs just showing up and showing out. And UCLA did. And it's not even just because of the hot shooting that they had at some times. You're also just going to see some physically imposing players. Lauren Betts for UCLA, we anticipated, was going to be active in the paint a lot. And she was. And she had 14 rebounds. That's just again,
a killer.
And that's just one player.
Yeah.
And that's just something as we go along. Also, them as a team, they were distributing the ball very well. We tried to do that as best as we can, but the shots were just not falling for us. They had 4 different players in double digits, and when you're getting scoring not just from your starters, but also from your bench, that's just going to make it even tougher. So going through that whole course of the game, there was just no wiggle room. There was no space where South Carolina went on a run. UCLA seized the game. They had it in their sights, they had it in their grip, and they just controlled it throughout all of those 4 quarters. Once South Carolina fell behind early on, they just could not dig themselves out of that hole. It was a problem against Michigan. Michigan was an inferior opponent. Clemson was an inferior opponent. Clemson got beat up by Alabama today in women's basketball, who is still a top 25 program, but they didn't even look to be on the same level as them, who was not even a top 20 team. So, just as a fan and someone who wants to see this team succeed, still worries me a bit. I am hopeful that they could figure it out. UCLA is definitely a program I could see being in the Final Four this year. There's no doubt about it. Right now, they're number one for a reason, and South Carolina has to figure how they are going to start to deal with some of these teams that might come at them with bigger players, with women that are over 6'6", 6'7", that could just bully them down the paint. And that's how it is when none of your starters, or even anyone on the bench for that matter, if this team is over 6'6". We just don't have that anymore.
Yeah, and when you have a disadvantage like that, you have to figure out where you can make it up on other areas of your team. Think of a great movie Moneyball, where they say, oh, we lost this guy who had 20 home runs, we're going to make it up with 3 guys who can total that. And that's kind of what you have to do in this situation. You're not going to just come across someone on the street who's 6'9", 7 feet that you can just add to your team on a random Wednesday afternoon. You're going to have to figure out your way against these taller opponents, because UCLA, not the only team in the country with big players. It's
obviously not.
We'll not run into another tall player again. No, you have to figure out your way around it. Excuse me. And where USC, it's clearly their biggest knock on them against them right now, other than their slow starts. But even in the second half, where they won the half, but it's still, that height advantage was just so evident.
Yeah.
And then trying to play from behind when you have that slow start, it doesn't help if every time you're trying to make a move on it, there's just someone big in your way. It takes away a very pivotal part of the game, which is getting physical with your opponent. Points in the paint is super important, and if you can't outbody someone, you have to make up the points elsewhere. And if you can't figure that out, you're not going to go very far in a tournament.
No, and it was also a little bit of a frustrating affair, too, because not only their tallest players giving us fits, also one of their shortest players, London Jones, 5'4", off the bench for them, which, not that tall, obviously. She is a guard, but she came off the bench and she put in 15 points. And she hit all of her three-pointers. So there was just nothing going right for South Carolina between more of the players that had that height advantage, some of their guards that even didn't have the height advantage. And that was just also due to some weak guard play on our end. And also that fans are really upset about. And, Dawn was catching a lot of heat for this as well, only having MiLaysia Fulwiley, seemingly one of our best players, out there for only 3 minutes. She went out there, she had a little bit of a frustrating time, turned the ball over, and once that happened, and she seemingly couldn't get grips on when she entered the game, she was taken right out. And I don't know if that was the right decision, if other things could have been done, but if the small ball wasn't going to work, there was just no way that you could overcome UCLA. And there was just a lot of little flips, trying to get the ball up towards the rim. We looked off balance with so many of our shots. Raven Johnson, love her, love all these players, love this team, but the shot selection was just not good, and it was very frustrating to watch as a fan. It's going to be difficult when you're trying to drive in the lane, get in the paint, and you're going up against these players that are much taller than you, even if just by a few inches. There was a series of blocks. Getting offensive rebounds was such a big difficulty, and that's why UCLA was able to just coast throughout the second half. And technically, South Carolina won from a point standpoint, but there was never an opportunity where it looked like we were going to be a threat. And just to that point also, I will say, not all of our guard play was bad. Pow still had a fantastic game. Tessa Johnson did as well. But just overall, as a team, it just wasn't enough, especially with UCLA with a reasonable field goal percentage and just being able to score, not necessarily at will, but almost at will when they were down low, because there was just nothing that South Carolina could do to get their hands up and be in their way in a full capacity. So it really is just a matter of figuring out how our shorter players and how we can actually play small ball and try to overcome that height disadvantage, because as you said, Adam, it is going to be there later in the season, and I don't want to see fans being frustrated at this team because of how much talent and the crop of it that is still a part of this program. We lost Cardoso last year. Okay, we still have all these incredible players who should be able to cobble together the ability that they have and still easily be a top 5 program, a Final Four team, and also a program that has a shot at a national championship. There's just going to be a lot of frustrated and upset fans now because of this loss, because they don't happen too often, and as you also stated, haven't had a regular season loss since 2021. But you got to take a deep breath, you got to relax, and you got to focus forward now because UCLA is in the rearview mirror. That was a really, really frustrating game. It's going to be. There's still people chattering about it on social media, and we're right before Thanksgiving. But you know what? We have a game against Iowa State, who is number 15, and that is going to be nationally televised on Fox on Turkey Day. And that's something this team has to focus on. You can't dwell on this game because, a lot went wrong, and more things need to go right soon.
Yeah, you hear the phrase a lot in sports, mostly like commentating, is that you have to have a short memory. Not too short that you forget why you've made these, you've had these mistakes or you've had these losses, but enough so that it doesn't dwell. So if you have a game like you had against UCLA, you had a slow start, you had no real point in the game where you could make up ground, you were always playing from behind. You have to remember why that happened, and I think a big reason why it happened was that slow start. UCLA gave USC plenty of chances in the early quarter. In the first quarter, it was, I think, until 5 minutes left in the first quarter. When
4 or 5.
Yeah, 4 or 5 minutes left in the first quarter.
Miss, so many misses.
Yeah, until USC finally got points on the board, and even then, it was only like 4-0. So it wasn't like USC was getting blown out, get the brakes blown out right from the beginning.
No, not at all.
It was both teams were struggling early on to get, sink the ball in the basket, but because of yet again those slow starts, it took way too long to get them running. By that point, you needed a much better offensive output that they've had to this point in the series against a team top 5 in the nation. So if they could have gotten going way earlier, they didn't really start looking like themselves until probably way late in the second, and then by then it was a 20-point deficit at 20 points at halftime, something like that. So if they don't have that early start, that slow start, they have a chance to play much differently in the second half. If you're going to halftime down 10, it's a much different outlook on the game other than we got to completely reset, we're out of sorts. If you go down 10, it's like, okay, we need to just fix some things up. And I think that they need to keep that in mind, that they can't keep getting off to these slow, trudging starts. And that's going to be huge, not just for Iowa State on Thursday, but every game the rest of the season. If you let teams hang around, sooner or later, another UCLA will happen.
Another UCLA or even just some other top 25 program that has the capacity to be able to knock you off. You are the defending national champion. Teams are going to want to face you. Teams are going to want to beat you. And now the Sharks are swimming, circling. They know you can be beat. You just can't beat at UCLA. You're not this an invincible, unmovable opponent anymore.
Yeah, the issue with being reminded that these players are human is that now every other program in the country knows they're human. They can be beaten. They have their weaknesses. They're not flawless. And now there is a blueprint on how to beat USC.
Well, yeah, and size can be a big factor in that as well, as we're just in the humble beginnings of the season. But as we also discussed, I do think this team will start to sew it up. Will start to stop the bleeding, and Dawn will start to get the right players in the right position. She is a fantastic coach. Her tenure here at South Carolina has been nothing short of amazing, especially during the second half. I have faith in her. I have faith in this program, and you're not always going to see this poor of shooting outlooks. Just one last quick look at the game. I have the stats pulled up here. Thank you, ESPN.com. Chloe Kitts, 1 for 7 in the game. Bree Hall, 1 for 5. Raven Johnson, 1 for 5. Maddie McDaniel, love her, great talented freshman, 1 for 5. So 20%.
Yeah, that's pretty rough
from the field. Not great. As I anticipated, just some of the numbers I remembered off the top of my head. Pow Pow, 7 for 13. She had 18 points. And Tessa Johnson, 5 for 9. and she had 14 points. And Pow Pow was still perfect on three-pointers. She was 4 for 4. So we still know that she's very talented, and it still takes a lot for her three-pointer to be thrown off. She'll easily, by the end of the season, be over 50% three-point percentage. I'm sure of it, at least over 45, but probably over 50. She's just that talented of a sharpshooter, which is great because we need that out there. But now as we go down the road, Thanksgiving is right around the corner. This is being recorded on Tuesday, the 26th, and we are going to be trying to settle into another top 20 matchup here because the left and right hooks are just going to keep coming at this program. It's only going to get slightly easier in some aspect because I do believe that UCLA is going to be a Final Four team, if not just an Elite Eight team. They're going to be there. They have the right recipe between the shooting I saw in that game and just the size. Like they really do have a great roster they put together. But as we have it now, South Carolina will face number 15, Iowa State. That is the Fort Myers tip-off, and that's going to be 1:30 on Fox. And another nationally televised game. Surprise, surprise. People want to watch women's basketball? Yeah, they do. And two players, I've looked over the roster, seeing some of the games that Iowa State has already played. They really had a poor game, and I don't think this is a good of a testament to the team, but at Northern Iowa, who could be a shocking smaller school this year, but they did suffer a 10-point loss at Northern Iowa. Everyone else, of course, won against. Right now, Iowa State is a 5-1 program, and that's why they're not in the top 10 anymore because they had that early season loss a little bit further back in November. But two players to watch right now, they've been doing the bulk of the scoring and rebounding as well. They've both been flirting with double-doubles on average for this team, and that is Audie Crooks and Addie Brown. Audie Crooks and Addie Brown, both sophomores for the Cyclones. Audie Crooks is a center, and she's a little undersized for a center. She's 6'3", but she's putting up 22 points a game and averaging 8 rebounds a game. Not too shabby for her, but she is their top scorer, and she is definitely going to be one to watch. One thing, of course, that gives South Carolina a bit of an advantage there, and why, from an analytics standpoint, I think that they won't be struggling as much, is your center is under 6'5", which is a little bit more favorable for what we're going to do. So I could easily see this, despite this being a very good team, as a bounce-back game for South Carolina. And Addie Brown, also a forward for them, sophomore forward. She is putting in 16 points a game and 8.7 rebounds. So between Audie and Addie, almost 8 rebounds a game, and Addie Brown, just a little less with points, 16, as opposed to Audie's 21. But they are going to be the players to watch. Still, 6'3" and 6'2". So that height is not really going to be as much of a problem with this one. So just trying to go through this game, you're going to be able to play small ball a little bit more. You're going to have very favorable matchups for Kitts and Watkins. They can maybe be out to outmuscle them a little bit. And that's what needs to happen. You need to go out here on Thanksgiving Thursday in front of a national TV audience, between some folks that maybe aren't really into the football game, maybe tune into Fox, say, oh, hey, there's a top 20 women's basketball game. Oh, South Carolina, yeah, they just lost. I want to see how they're doing. And you need to be able to put on a good show out there and get your season right back on track. This is a get-right game that they need to try and take advantage of.
Yeah, and I think that UCLA loss might have come at either the best time in the season or the worst time of the season, because we mentioned it last week, a really rough schedule coming up. And Iowa State is going to be the most important game of that slate, because if they don't get right against Iowa State and we're seeing the same issues, then it goes from against UCLA, it's like, well, one game, we had these issues, but whatever. And then if it happens again against Iowa State, and it's like, all right, now we have a lingering problem.
And that would be another point of reference to making us have to look up, which I really, really hope we do not have to do. Not even think about it. The last time this program, don't look it up.
Now you got me curious. I have to look it up.
The last time this program lost back-to-back regular season games, and that is something that we could just not face right now with the stretch that is still to come. You still have TCU, who's got Haley Van Lith playing pretty well down there in Texas, and Duke that you're going to be hosting into early December. So we need to use this as a get-right game and just show everyone, hey, we are South Carolina. Hey, we're still one of the best programs in the country. We can knock down our shots, and we are here to play some good ball. And that's just going to be something and a mentality I'm sure Dawn is trying to instill in the players. And there's just been way too much just upheaval of fans. People getting mad at Dawn, people telling or posting that MiLaysia Fulwiley should transfer. It's like, guys, it's one game.
Yeah.
Maybe some of the best decisions were made. It was a bit frustrating. Losses don't happen for this program often, but UCLA also could just be a very, very good team, elite team, obviously, and that's going to be just something that you have to settle with, that you can get these losses. It's not time to panic. You can't be getting mad at Dawn, can't be getting mad at these players, not telling them to transfer. Just chill, see how things progress as we are still in 2024, and we're not that many games into this season yet, and we've got a lot of time.
Yeah, that's the big thing about this, is that the season is very young. We don't know what this team's going to look like come March. Like, we could be...
No, exactly. Great point.
Yeah, people could be getting... these girls could be getting these, 3 minutes in one game, and then come March, it'll be, regular starter.
30 more.
30.
Who knows?
More.
We'll
yeah, full time, So there's really... It's one of those overreaction on social media things that you kind of have to put in the back of your mind that, remember, these are emotions as they're happening. There's a reason why decisions are not usually made in sports in the heat of the moment. It's because things are very frustrating when they happen, especially to a program like this, which has not seen regular season losses in almost 3 years. You have to accept things as they happen and then go, okay, what was the issue here? What can we do to fix it in the future? If you're transferring off one game, there's bigger issues.
Honestly, please relax. Not transferring after one game. Yeah, she was seemingly emotional. Not the best time from MiLaysia, whatever happened between her and Dawn. But it's just, you need to let these things play out. This is one game, an isolated incident, and what just overall was very tough team-wise as it was. Maybe there could have been better decisions made, but there's no point in looking back at this now other than from a film standpoint and just trying to get better. You need to come back together as a team. I know this team has a great relationship with each other, with their coach, and you just need to keep building off of that, not forget it. And you have plenty of opportunities between what is left of the slate in November and December to get right back on track and accept that UCLA was an elite team, should continue to be an elite team. You got to settle in here. This is just stop panicking. People have been panicking way too much, and it also comes down to being a spoiled fan base. I am super spoiled. The first show I did for this, I talked about briefly how spoiled I was, because when I moved down to South Carolina, that was 4 years ago. It was still very odd times because it was just after the pandemic, but just starting to watch this program and how good they were already. I already knew of them. I already knew of Dawn because I was a Dawn Staley fan for a long time, being a Philly sports fan all my life and her being from there. But it's just like, you need to be able to settle down. You can't be getting this upset over one loss on the road to a top 5 program. That could easily be a top 1 or 2 or 3 program at the end of the year when the chips fall and the NCAA tournament is laid out. So we'll see what happens. And right now it's definitely just settling back to that 1-0 mentality, one game at a time, as you have a big one coming up. And when you have that opportunity to showcase your skills on national TV, there's just no better opportunity from what I'm looking at than to get the train back on the tracks and full steam ahead.
Yeah, that's, like you said, just in the heat of the moment, it's fine to have these reactions. It's fine to question what's up with the minutes. Is that a prolonged issue that will happen? But there's no way to know that because it was one game. If we're asking at the end of the season why we're not giving these players more minutes, then it's like, okay, is there something going on here? But one game. Again, one game, first regular season loss in 3 years. Let's pump the brakes a bit. Again, okay to be emotional and reactionary. Okay to question these things, why they happened, what we could have done differently. But hindsight's 2020. We don't know if that would have changed anything if had it happened. So it's just, keep it in the back of your mind for going forward for games ahead of us. But if, upcoming weeks she gets 30 minutes a game, then clearly it was not an issue.
No, it's probably not going to be. I really do think that it was just a matter of seeing the writing on the wall, Don trying to throw a little bit more of a shakeup out there, and, MiLaysia Fulwiley, such a good player. I'm sure that they were really trying to key in on her, and even just throwing things out there. Might be completely wrong, but perhaps wanted to try and just throw a combination of other players out there that maybe they didn't expect to be in there, starting full-time or getting more time on the court to try and throw UCLA off. And just the vibes were not there early in the game. Like, we could tell it was going to be a really tough battle when they started to miss those shots, and then UCLA just got out to that lead to begin with. But now it is all about trying to find out who is going to be, the ones to step up. I'm hopeful the entire team will step back up, and that behind the scenes they have been, having some good locker room discussions, not getting discouraged because you're facing a loss, especially for the players on this program that was their first loss ever in college. And yeah, that's gonna dawn on you a little bit, but it's not something that can hang around with you long term, as we've got quite the slate coming up, and there's no need to keep giving reminders, but I will anyway. Yeah, Thanksgiving, got Iowa State, top 20 matchup. Purdue we play as a part of the same tournament. It's Iowa State, and then we play Purdue on Saturday, a couple days after. But then it's still going to be very tough with Duke and then at TCU. We've got a lot of big games on the slate, and then it gets a little bit easier. But then we have a top 5 matchup against Texas right now slated for January. A top 10 matchup against Oklahoma. A top 10 matchup against LSU. And I could keep going on and on. This is just going to be a time for us to just figure things out and try to settle where players can go to make sure they are being the most successful. And that is going to take some adjustments. Sometimes it's not just like you can go into a game, you see things are problematic, and you can always just make those in-game adjustments. Yes, coaches can do that, but if the team is really that good, there's only so much you can do. You need time to prepare for things sometimes. You need to look down the road. You need to analyze more tape. And if things don't pan out between 1 or 2 quarters, it doesn't mean it's just automatically going to get better in the second half unless you happen to just start making your shots. Like, straight up, it doesn't matter where you're throwing them up from, where you're trying to hoist threes. They just have to go in. That really doesn't have anything to do with trying to adjust the game plan. It just wasn't a good day, and we want to hope for better days. And 1:30, Thanksgiving, Fox. Cyclones down in Florida, I think, will be the place to do it. What do you have any final thoughts on the last game, this one coming up, from what we've been trying to break down here, my friend?
I found the last time we lost back-to-back games.
Sure. When was that?
Right, so, if we go including non-regular season, we have March of 2019. Lost March 3rd, 2019 against number 5 Mississippi State. And then lost in the quarterfinals of the SEC Championship Tournament, March 8th, 2019, against number 10 Arkansas. And then if you want to get in the regular season, last time was November 23rd and November 24th of 2018 at the Vancouver Showcase, losing against number 9 Oregon State and then versus Drake. So it has been a long time since we've seen that, and
but not super long. Not super long. Like it's like historically long.
No, but it is definitely before any of the current members of the team.
Oh, well, yeah.
Any of the players
before
of the
the
team.
Pandemic, too. It was
before the pandemic.
Completely different.
The before times. Yeah.
It really was before times.
Even still, they made it to the Sweet 16 that year anyway.
Yeah, they still had great,
it is still
great
a successful team.
And 2017, they won the title.
Yeah, so it is not something to worry about. Like I said, reactionary in sports, being reactionary, it's expected. It happens.
Especially when you're elite.
Especially when you're elite. You see great teams all the time. When they start to show signs that they're human, people start freaking out. Like, what's going on? I'm not used to this. We see it with New England Patriots fans now. They are now going through it, witnessing, 6 Super Bowls? And then over 20 years, ridiculous. And then now that they're one of the bottom feeders in the AFC, you see a lot of fans like, okay, what do we do? Because,
why can't we? What do you mean we're not winning Super Bowls?
What do you mean we don't have a great quarterback anymore and a great head coach? I
had the parade plans already made.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you have to get used to. I don't want to say get used to because you don't want losing to become a habit, obviously. But you have to remember every game that someone wins, somebody has to lose. And sometimes you're not always going to be lucky. Even when we were watching the game, it just seemed like they weren't. There were some times where it was like, this isn't a bad play, but the shots just weren't falling.
Not falling at all.
And then UCLA, it seemed like they would just chuck the ball up and then it would just go in.
That's what I mean. You had that,
so,
again, off the bench.
Yeah.
She scored, London scored 4 for 4 3-pointers. So they were just really hot in that game. And any little just finger rolls, we're not hitting the glass right, just how many rolling around the rim for South Carolina. And that's it. They just couldn't do it. It was a bad day. You have bad days sometimes, and that mentality is going to sit with you throughout it. You just can't dwell on it, and that's what we want to do here. We're trying to foster the positive vibes. We know this team is good. We know this team is elite. And I am confident that they will bounce back, as our fan base should be too.
Absolutely. I don't see any reason to hit the panic button. I certainly don't see any reason to transfer this early in the season.
Yeah, it's like, calm down already.
Let's
transfer.
Like I said, pump the brakes. Take the punch on the chin there and just figure out a way to punch back.
That's right. So we're going to be looking on to that one, and I'm hoping for a lot more positive vibes on our end as we break down a win. Want to see that win for South Carolina against Iowa State. And from what I've looking at the size differential not being as big of a problem, just personally, I think we need to start trying to go with some predictions here. It's just a little bit in the heat of the moment with everything still reeling from that loss. But I will say, for that game on a neutral floor against Iowa State, I'm going to be going with a 13-point win for the Gamecocks if you want to throw a prediction out yourself. You do not have to. I know it's on the spot.
Yeah, I wasn't prepared for this. I mean, if we've done on our NASCAR podcast, we just kind of pick things out sometimes. But I think I'll go in the same realm. I don't know if it'll be a blowout. I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I don't know. I think it'll be double digits. I'll say a safe 10-point win. A
safe 10-point win, but still double digits. And that would be a great start to Thanksgiving. And for us, that'll be a little bit before dinner on our end. So that would be nice as we go into Turkey Day Thursday. And then with the second game awaiting in that tournament in Fort Myers against Purdue. So let's get right, Gamecocks. Thank you, everyone, for taking a check-in. I am Tony with Adam. Both gentlemen, we know it's ladies first, and let's see what goes on as we get towards the holiday. Also, just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Whether you celebrate or not, I hope it is a great just rest of the week and upcoming weekend for y'all. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.